Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb, and I am the redneck. And you bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to convince you to do it too. A reminder that when we here on Redneck Gone Green talk about going green, we mean that in two very important ways. First, deep ecology, not merely environmentalism or conservation, but a recognition that all of life is interconnected. It is a sacred reciprocal relationship, and that whatever we do to the web of life, we ultimately do to ourselves. The second way we mean green is Green Party, which is to say, I'm a proud member of the Green Party who works with progressive Democrats and socialists and independents and people who don't believe in electoral politics. But the point is, y'all, that I believe there needs to be an electoral arm of our growing movements for peace, justice, democracy, and ecology. I personally believe that the Green Party is the best expression of that, but I am not a partisan Green. And with that, we're going to introduce the topic of this show, build and fight. Now, I want to acknowledge that I had hoped to have Kali Akuno on as a guest. He is not able to join us, but he is going to be rescheduled. But I figured that this conversation was so important that we would have the conversation around build and fight and the creation of a new 501c4 to do that. I want to be transparent and clear. Kali Akuno is the chair of the board of directors for that new formation. I am going to be the coordinator of that formation. But the formation that we're talking about, called again, Build and Fight, that's literally a way to do transformational electoral politics. Now, again, I want to be clear. When people talk about wanting to make systemic transformational change, and then you say, let's talk about elections, folks typically fall into one of two categories. One category of folks will say, look, you just said you wanted transformational change. If elections could change anything, they'd be illegal. Elections are for chumps. Like, social movements are the only thing that's ever actually been part of systemic transformational change. That's one group. The second group are a group of folks who say, are you like elections? Thank goodness you're talking about using elections for transformational change, because elections are where we elect people who have the ability to make and implement policies and laws to do it. You should focus on elections and let's run a big, good voter ID and get out the vote campaign so we can make that happen. And that other stuff, movement stuff, whatever, like elections are where it's at. Y'all, I understand both of those folks. And I like to say they're both right, which means, of course, they're both wrong, which is, y'all, it should not be an either or, either elections or social movements. It's both and. So to me, the thing that I'm most excited about is the idea of creating a political formation that is going to be explicit and clear about transformation and is going to engage in elections in a way that engages both candidates and ballot initiatives, right? So, and the formation even deeper would literally, it will require candidates to make a public pledge that they will not seek or accept corporate money. And that formation has to be willing to work with Greens and socialists and independents and progressive Democrats. That is a formation that is what I call transpartisan. That is an ability to actually go beyond that. And since Kali Akuno is not here, I'm going to invite that handsome executive producer that you all know and love, Jackrabbit, into the conversation so that he can, as we say where I'm from, hey, Jackrabbit, grade my papers. I want you, as somebody who comes out of, deep social change, who had a can we say you flirted with, or like went steady with electoral politics for a while, and then you quit in disgust? I mean, how do we talk about your unique vantage point from anarchist to Occupy Wall Street to Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I didn't really care at all about electoral politics, only in the most peripheral way. I didn't really pay any attention. I considered myself to be an anarchist. There was a time where I was kind of like I thought I was maybe a libertarian. I was kind of I was a mixed up bag, and I blame most of it for I blame Robert Anton Wilson for that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not, but basically my politics came from the Illuminatus trilogy. So if you know anything about that, then you'll know to run screaming anytime I'm coming near. So that's kind of like I saw Bernie Sanders as essentially the last step before the collapse of American democracy, and I feel like I was right about that. I mean, I now that I look in retrospect, I definitely can see that. I hate to say this, but yeah, he was the sheepdog after all, wasn't he? You can nod your head, David. I know you're right. But oh yeah, no, it's true. So I definitely I always saw that I was always well aware that the system was seriously broken. It had a lot of problems, and I was just kind of like hoping that I could just take a step away and do my own thing, and people would like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. He's doing such a great job. We'll follow him. It was nonsense, right? But then when Bernie was around, I was kind of like, okay, well, he seems like he's got the right ideas. Maybe if he gets elected, I can help, and that's going to make a difference. And now I know better. So, this is why I wanted to check in with you about this, because I thought I heard you say something about progressive Democrats, and I just want to kind of like, can you just kind of tell me a little bit? Can you walk me back from the ledge here? Because when I hear the word Democrats, it's just like, not really keen on that. And also, I think as a second part of that question is, why did you not mention Republicans, or did I miss that?
No, I didn't mention Republicans, although because I have not been able to find a Republican these days who would be willing to get on board with the approach that we're describing, right? So remember that the entire orientation here is transformational, and it is to democratize the economy, democratize elections themselves, democratize the legal system. And so there you go. Catherine self-identifies as a liberal Democrat, right? And we'll go into why I do think I work with progressive Democrats all the time, uh, and so I'll circle back, right? Why progressive Democrats are so important? Because Jack, I know this: the rank and file members of the Democratic Party, like let's take Catherine, who is a frequent visitor, guest, and contributor here on Redneck Gone Green. Uh, Catherine self identifies as a liberal Democrat. And what I would say is, I bet if we would to bring Catherine on this program, and please, Catherine, feel free to engage in the chat. But what we would find is that Catherine is opposed to war. Uh, Catherine wants to see a guaranteed living wage to all workers. Catherine would like to see us transition off of oil, coal, and other fossil fuels onto sustainable alternative energy. Catherine wants to see us abolish corporate constitutional rights. I could go through the litany of lists, right? Here's the thing: progressive Democrats exist in the membership of the Democratic Party. Elected officials and the leadership of especially the National Democratic Party, are mostly neoliberals, and they fake being liberal or progressive, right? So there you go. Catherine says, I'm in favor of all that, and I also live in Texas. So how about that? I don't know if you would self-identify as a redneck, Catherine, but a couple of Texans here. I think folks may know I'm from Texas. But what I'll say is this: Jack, when I talk about progressive Democrats, what I'm saying is I'm not going to turn somebody who's a member of the Democratic Party into my enemy simply because of their partisan label. Now, I, as you know, absolutely, Jack, am a green. And I was the one who told you that, when Bernie Sanders was first running, the very first time, that I was I understood why people were excited, but I did not think that he was ever going to win the nomination, and that ultimately he would sheepdog people back into the Democratic Party. And, as you know, Jack, uh, Bernie Sanders didn't disappoint me because he did exactly what I thought he was going to do.
Yeah, no,
Right.
and no offense to Catherine, by the way. Catherine, I meant no disrespect to you. I mean, obviously, I respect you very much, considering that you're willing to be a part of the Redneck Gone Green community. So, definitely, I know you're on the right page. So that's cool. Definitely, as David was alluding to, I think that the leadership of the Democratic Party is simply unredeemable, and I think that we see a lot of times that we've seen often, and I'm sure David's got even more examples, but I mean, like, there's Bernie, there's like every member of the squad, Pramila Jayapal. I mean, like the list feels pretty endless of disappointments, and I don't think that that's a bug. I think it's a feature of the Democratic Party, and so that's why I definitely consider that to be an issue, but not necessarily with individual Democrats for sure. But that does, kind of, I mean, that kind of segues into transpartisan, right, David? That's something that I'm not sure if you feel like you fully covered that or not, but um, if you want to get into that a little bit more, and my build and fight is transpartisan.
Yes, and that's exactly it, folks. That remember that what we're talking about is a political formation that's not just raising money and giving it to candidates. Uh, it is a different orientation. It is to say, we're going to actually build a political organization that has clarity, that we need an explicitly post capitalist economic system, that we need to be encouraging worker owned cooperatives, universal basic income, public banking, community land trusts, locally owned energy production and distribution models, uh, the whole gamut of democratized democratic economy, right? And that is something that is happening all across the country, but it is something that the leadership of the Democratic Party uh, will will not embrace, even if you will find examples individually in some locations where they'll be supportive of those things. But wait, there's more, because we also want to talk about democratizing elections. By that, I mean things like ranked choice voting and proportional representation, things like full publicly funded elections, things like uh, ending felony disenfranchisement, which is a completely perverted and racist application where the intersection of our criminal justice system, our racist society, and elections kind of merge. In addition to that, we want to institute immigrant voting rights, same day voter registration, make elections a holiday. But wait, there's even more. We want to democratize the entire legal system by abolishing the illegitimate court created idea that corporations are persons with constitutional rights. We want to abolish the equally odious, also court created, and also incorrect idea that the expenditure of money is First Amendment free speech. We want to support and empower local communities for self rule initiatives. We want to advocate for the use of quo warranto proceedings, which is Latin for by what authority, where you can literally have state attorney generals, county district attorneys, or perhaps even state initiated private citizens issue corporate charter revocation proceedings against corporations that have a routine history of violating safety, health, environmental protection, and worker laws. Imagine passing three strikes and you're outlaws against corporations. Imagine passing legislation that prohibits corporations from ever spending any money to support elections. So the
David, can
point
we
I'm
get can
making.
we can we get capital punishment for CEOs on there as well? Is that something that's possible? I
Well, I'll
mean, I
tell you.
just wanted to go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you
No,
go.
well,
You
look,
tell me. Tell me.
I think it's pretty interesting. I think I could get down with life imprisonment under hard labor for CEOs. The
I'll
death
make that
penalty for the
compromise.
corporation.
I'll make that compromise, David.
All right, look at that. See, we already made a compromise, Jack. But the point I'm making, y'all, to Jack and to everybody else is what I'm describing is what the global South, or what happens in Latin America, Asia, Africa, uh, all across the world, grassroots movement engage in elections in a from the bottom up, and they make demands that elected officials have to react to. And in our country, uh, 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 we end up chasing politicians. I do want to throw up Kelly's, I think, astute comment here. All of these things David is listing are things people would really want if they knew about it. So, Kelly, thank you for that. Again, Kelly is another frequent contributor here on Redneck Gone Green. And what's really worth pointing out, Kelly, is everything I'm talking about. These are actually majoritarian positions, right? So your assertion, I can tell you, is demonstrably true and backed up by polling data, right? So these are absolutely supported by the majority of Americans, but they're not implemented by any place, whether Democrats or Republicans are in charge, because at the end of the day, the leadership of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are basically in agreement about how society is supposed to operate. They are in support of capitalism and neoliberalism. They are in support of U.S. empire. It's a shell game that the leadership of the Democratic and Republican parties play, which is why I work very hard when I meet a principled conservative, and I do think that principled conservatives exist, that I say, let's find ways to work together where we can work together.
So, David, I'm going to ask you a question. What makes build and fight, which sounds great, it sounds wonderful, and kind of echoing what echoing what Kelly was just saying, this is something that so many of these elements that you were bringing up, all these ideas and ways to change economy and to change democratic engagement and all that sounds wonderful, right? They sound really great and they're very appealing to a lot of people, which is why there are a lot of organizations out there claiming to support this stuff who actually don't end up doing anything. And so what I'm putting to you here is, David, what makes what you're trying to do different or unique from other organizations that have similar agendas?
It's a great question, and I appreciate, as always, Jack brings the hard questions. Uh, Here's what makes a difference. Number one, uh, most of the electoral formations are really just about trying to elect candidates. They're not really issue focused. You may get a platform list, but the whole point is electability and trying to get somebody who can get elected. I'm saying I am way more concerned about building a robust, broad, militant mass movement that engages elections but does not focus on elections, right? So that's a distinction. Like almost all of these other groups, they really end up being, if they're involved in elections in any kind of way as a 501c4, which is a political or an IRS designation, y'all, they're just fronts for the Democratic Party, right? And the Democratic Party really controls the show. So that's one difference between us, Jack. But wait, you say, what about all these other groups? David Cobb, Redneck Gone Green. You've had all these other people who talk like this on your show. And there's these fantastic organizations that you get them to talk about, like Cooperation Vermont or the US Solidarity Economy Network or the Participatory Budgeting Project, or on and on and on and on. To which I will say, good question, astute listener and viewer of Redneck Gone Green. And every one of those organizations are 501c3 organizations. Now, as a lawyer, you know why that matters? Because the Internal Revenue Service code has specifically been written to depoliticize or de-electoralize social change groups. So you're not allowed to electioneer for candidates if you're a nonprofit charitable organization. What we're doing is something unique, Jack, because we're saying we're going to do that kind of specific work around issue work that C3s normally do, but we're going to do it as a C4 so that elections are part of what we're doing. And not just candidates, but I want you to imagine for a moment ballot initiatives on things like no corporate money in our local elections. Here's another one, Jack. We know that Margaret Kimberly and the Conversation on Gaza was a very popular program. Now I want you to imagine for a moment Build and Fight as a 501c4 helps to incubate and run local ballot initiatives calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And we use that to demonstrate the growing political power that this ceasefire movement has. And it forces elected officials to take positions because a ballot initiative is actually on the ballot. So, and I can go down the list of examples where we can use electoral politics in a much more powerful transformational way. And honestly, Jack, I'll say it again. The reality is that most of the electoral formations are basically subservient to and under the direction of the Democratic Party apparatus. And we're talking about building something genuine independent that welcomes rank and file Democrats, but does not allow the neoliberal leaders of the Democratic Party to dictate what we do or how we do it.
Right on, David. Well, thank you for explaining all that. It sounds really great, and it is very consistent with everything that we've been talking about on Redneck Gone Green. Since this is often what we have on, we have people on who are talking about alternative economics and alternative ways of kind of building democracy, which I think is great. So, really sorry that we couldn't have Kali on today, so we could get his perspective, integrating, his experience with Cooperation Jackson. But yeah, so
So I'm going to take this opportunity to share with listeners and viewers that don't despair, because Kali Akuno is going to join us on the first Tuesday in March, and get this, Jack, every first Tuesday thereafter. So we're about to get Kali Akuno into what we'll call regular rotation, just like we'll do with Margaret Kimberly. I also want to lift up Jacqueline, who writes in a comment. She says, I think in the West, we have a political system in which politicians who may have good intentions feel coerced into selling out on some of their ideals. And I think this is a very powerful point that Jacqueline is making, because, again, there's a phrase, I forget who said it, because if I could remember, I would give them credit. I didn't come up with this idea, but I think it's a very important one. And that is, really, we typically, most of us do not rise to the into our individual aspirations. What we end up doing is falling into the systems in which we operate, right? And this is the point and this is why I think Jack and his Jack bristling about the Democratic Party is something that I'm in alignment with, and that is the leadership of the Democratic Party tends to discipline they have a system of rewards and discipline. So when a genuine, absolute progressive populist does get elected, they end up getting punished if they don't fall into line to go along to get along. Here's an example. I live in Northern California, right? Way back in the day, there was a fellow who got elected to Congress in the same year that Bill Clinton got elected. His name was Dan Hamburg. He got elected as a Democrat. Uh, and he won in the state of California in the U.S. Congress, and Bill Clinton the same year that Bill Clinton did. And Dan Hamburg was disgusted by NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and the Defense of Marriage Act. And I go down the list of just how horrible Bill Clinton was. And literally, Bill Clinton and the Democratic National Committee starved Dan Hamburg out, refused to give him money, and literally let a Republican win that seat. Dan was not able to hold it. To his credit, Dan Hamburg then said a pox on the Democratic Party leadership, joined the Green Party. It ended up running for governor on the Green Party ticket, then ran for at the local level, uh, and got elected to the County Board of Supervisors in Mendocino County as a Green Party member. So I'm just pointing out it takes a special breed of cat to be willing to go up against the leadership of the Democratic Party because they're thugs. Because, again, the system is the problem. And the idea that one individual champion can work within the Democratic Party, I think is at best, it's a fool's errand, right? It's just not possible to stay a leader in the Democratic Party and to be able to do what the build and fight formula aspires to do.
Well,
Now,
I don't think there's a whole lot of argument that you could have there. I mean, considering that you see that there was this movement, well, I wouldn't call it a movement. There was like a huge push of like grassroots energy around politics that came out of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And, and we see the excitement around AOC getting elected and, beating the fourth most powerful Democrat in Congress, like Joe Crowley. And there was so much energy around that. The Democratic Socialists of America, their numbers grew dramatically because of all the interest in this idea of socialism that Bernie was kind of like getting into people's ears. And and then you have like and then you have the next election, you have like the elections of Cory Bush and the rest of the squad. And we see that these individuals have been really just ineffectual. They barely try to do anything at all. And most of the stuff they do is like, on social media, a couple press conferences that they'll have on the Capitol steps. I mean, it's very much a letdown. And I think that you see the kind of the relationship that the Democratic Socialists of America have with these people and how effective they are at really kind of leveraging any power. And so, I would love it if you would want to kind of like, how do you see the idea of accountability? Oh, and that's something that I wanted to mention as well, is like, I love that we had Kate Shea-Baird on, last year to talk about what they did in Barcelona, in Spain, with with their organization that got Ada Colau elected to be mayor of Barcelona, and the way that they were all about like engaging, having town halls, dealing with like directly engaging with the population of the city and getting feedback from them to be able to move forward actual progressive policy. And so I want to know from you, what in America are we going to do? How can Build and Fight move this idea forward in America? I mean, America isn't Spain, obviously. And so, we can't do the same things that they did there. What makes you think that Build and Fight has an opportunity to really make a difference?
Because there is actually a history of doing something like this in America. It was back in the populist uprising, the 1880s up to the turn of the century in the 1900s. There was something called the Nonpartisan League. And the Nonpartisan League actually built a platform and a program and then said, we don't care what party you're in, but will you support these policies that we have said are important to us? And they built a powerful grassroots organization that was not a political party, but said, if you're for us, then we're for you. And if you're against us, we're against you. Right. And that approach is part of why the populist uprising and the People's Party emerged across this country. It's why in Minnesota, for example, you actually don't have a Democratic Party. You have the Democratic Farm Labor Party, because the Farm Labor Party merged with the Democratic Party. My point is, Jack, there's actually a history of this working in the United States, but most people don't know the history because most people don't geek out on political economy and social change movement history the way I do. And again, I don't think that makes me, special, or maybe it makes me special in a funny kind of short bus way. I'm sorry. I think that may actually be insulting. I didn't mean to do that, but I'm just pointing out, right?
I thought it was funny.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to be obnoxious, right? I mean, I want to be funny and make a joke, but I want to be respectful, right?
It was yeah, it was that was so I think my question though is like, yes, I think it's great that there have been I guess my question to you is, what have you learned about the historical successes that you think you can use in today's world? Because obviously it's a
So
different world today. So what's
yeah, so Jack, thank you for that sort of continuing to push the issue, because one of the things that the Nonpartisan League successfully did was to say it's not just a series of policy and platform positions, and it's not just elections. They were also connected to the creation of the farmers' alliances, and then the creation of the very first granary co-ops. I mean, if you travel across the Midwest, you'll see all these big, huge silos, right? These grain silos, and almost all of those were examples where people were doing grain cooperatives. Why? Because the bankers and the financiers were screwing them, uh, uh, and and uh, and so they created cooperative ecosystems, and they had a sub treasury plan. I mean, the Farmers Alliance and the co-op and the sub treasury plan were an amazing example of merging like direct uh, uh, mutual aid and elections. So, like, yay, it worked. You know where the mistake that I think they made, Jack? Are you ready for this?
I'm listening.
They merged into the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
That
I was actually gonna mention that, there have been a number of different attempts over the decades, over the centuries, to kind of like create these alternative pockets of community and economy. And what lights up for me when I hear you talking about this is the efforts of Black Americans to, start their own Black bank and like support, projects that are in their neighborhoods to, support that community. And the sad reality is that kind of approach, that economic approach where like that some people call Black capitalism, is destined to fail, because there is a leakage where the money that is invested into these economic systems is leached out by the broader predatory capitalist system. And so it's like, I think that is always has to always be a concern, and something to be considered when you're talking about building parallel economics. Okay, that's my particular take on it, because it's just a fact. It's a so yeah, it's just something to
yeah.
keep in mind.
So
And
let me take that head on, Jack, before because I don't want to I'll let you come back to the next point you're going to make, but I do want to underscore my agreement with you about the inherent nature of predatory. Like, capitalism is predatory, right? And what makes the solidarity economy framework different is it is explicitly and intentionally post-capitalist, right? It's not dogmatic and says this is what you have to do, but it says we can't ultimately reform capitalism. We're going to need a new economic system. And so black capitalism will not liberate black folks. Black capitalism can make some black people rich, just like capitalism makes some white folks rich, right? But like black capitalism is never going to liberate black folks any more than capitalism liberated white folks. I mean, I come from a family where the boss man had his boot on our family's neck from jump, right? Like, so I don't have to be convinced that capitalism can't be reformed. Uh, and I think that I got to lift up Jacqueline, who wrote in, you can't change anything or create anything worthwhile if you adopt the tactics of the capitalist oppressors. I mean,
Amen,
Jacqueline,
Jackie.
this is a redneck gone green listener viewer after my heart, right? Like, I completely agree with that. And what I'm saying is, it's not enough to just be like in the coffee shop or even on the barricade shaking our fist at the oppressors. The point is, there is a way to create new economic systems even within this current society, but you have to have political and clarity that you're doing something that is not only alternative and a niche, but that at the end of the day, you're talking about the community owns these entities, right? That it's a question of who owns the means of production. It's also a question of not just ownership, but of understanding what class struggle really means. And so when I talk about class, y'all, I'm not merely talking about socioeconomic status, although that's intimately related. I'm asking who actually owns the means of production. Because, Jack, I'll tell you, the number of people that I meet who says, "Oh, I'm a capitalist," and I say, "Oh, really? What means of production do you actually own?" And all I have to do is like, and the fact that they own some shares in a stock, I mean, these people, they get a 401k and they think they're a capitalist. It's like, no, you are not. Like, you may be benefiting from this economic system, but capitalism has a definition, right? And when I talk about class struggle, what I'm talking about is understanding that the role of the non-owning class is to actually take control over the economy and society and operate our entire society for everyone's benefit. And
Yeah, and I want to kind of key off of what the lovely Kelly says, which is that most people are suffering right now due to our current level of capitalism. They also do not have any idea of what steps to take to help themselves and others. Communities need educational town halls, and I think that
brilliant.
yeah, and
Like,
I think that this really comes to like the need for a multi-pronged approach towards any kind of change, and why fetishizing electoralism is a dead end, because there well, for a lot of the things that we've talked about, and we can see the dead end of the squad, and Bernie's campaign, even Dennis Kucinich, who I really appreciate, but you see that even though he was an individual with like great politics, total like amazing amount of integrity. I think he still has a ton of integrity. But you see what happens when the democratic machine can just like set its sights on somebody and just like, trash them and tear them down. So it's really like what Kelly brings up is she's kind of pointing to the need to have a multi-pronged approach. And while she's talking about educational town halls, I think that there is a need to kind of really change the culture, as well as the economy. And it's one of the things that has come up over the months that we've been doing Redneck Gone Green that I think is so important, is the idea of being able to give people an economic alternative, right, that they can actually hold on to. I think that that's absolutely essential to be able to offer people put is there a way for you to put food on the table, or at the very least money in your pocket, in a way that is like consistent with these principles and your ideals, right?
100%. And again, I want to circle back to Kelly. And again, Kelly, I think that this idea of communities coordinating and presenting educational town halls is brilliant. And it shows in my organizing language would say, oh, Kelly is an organic intellectual, which is Kelly, you may not know, but like in my circles, we call those people's movement assemblies, are participatory processes where ordinary folks actually bring folks together, not experts, but instead ordinary people do these kind of town halls. And that's one of the things that makes Build and Fight as a 501c4 unique is we're literally talking about both doing elections and people's movement assemblies and incubating worker co-ops and. So the thing is, it's not electoral fetishism, even though in elections you will find us engaging in elections. But what we're going to be doing is in between elections, not just building voter list and voter identification list and, preparing for the next election. We're going to be preparing our community to meet needs and preparing our community to govern ourselves. And like as we build up and out, we prepare our community to be so powerful, so engaged that elected officials actually have to worry about us as opposed to we worry about them during elections. It's literally flipping the script.
Right. I mean, like as V for Vendetta says, governments need to be afraid of their people.
I
So
think that's
yeah,
boy. I wish that you know what, Jack. We probably can't do this on our various platforms, but man, I love that line, and I wonder if we would get in trouble if we made that a tagline.
no, we would not get in trouble for that. No.
All right. Well, in that case, we might have to take an audio clip and start inserting it into that show because Jack's reference to V for Vendetta, like that's a powerful film, y'all. And I'll also say again, like the difference between us being afraid of our government and I got to tell you, if you're not afraid of this government, then you're not paying attention, right? Uh, but imagine instead a government afraid of us. Well, the reality is, Jack, that's one of the lessons that I picked up from Kate on the municipalism program, and that is that they had built such a broad and deep and engaged community that folks were literally scared of the people's assembly processes that were underway, right? So lessons learned about the importance of not just engaging in elections, but also meeting people's needs. As you said, food on the table or money in their pocket. That's why I think it's so critical. It's not either or, it's got to be both and.
Yeah, one of the things that they did in Barcelona was they would have regular people's assemblies. And, eventually, I believe, as I recall, it did get to be a little bit too much. I think that, at least for like the mayor herself, I think that it became to be too much. There was too much for people to do.
Mhm.
But, that was a real thing. And I would suggest that that's something that should be part of, a condition for support from Build and Fight. If I was to make a suggestion, humbly, is that, people who are going to get that support from your organization, make sure that they commit to engaging directly with their constituents. I mean, I think that you see like Nancy Pelosi, I don't believe that she's had a town hall the entire 50 years that she's been in office, or she doesn't have debates with her with her competition and in her primaries. I mean, I think that would go a long way towards building this idea of real community engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, I look, I completely agree with you, Jack. I mean that this idea of making sure, like, I guess that another way to come at this or to talk about it is to recognize that we don't just need candidates and elected officials, who are scared of their constituents. What we really need are members of our community who are social change agents to actually be running for office that are committed to being accountable to the movement itself. In other words, right now, uh, it is exceptionally rare to see an elected official who really thinks and acts as if they are truly servants of the people. Right? It's just not how the process works. And so that's why I thought your point, Jack, earlier about changing the culture is so important. It's all connected, right? So yes, we should do elections, but not fetishize elections. And yes, we should do people's assemblies, but not so much that it burns the people out or burns the process out. Yes, we should do worker owned co-ops, but if all we do are co-ops, then all we've done is at best create a little job for ourselves where, oh, cool, we fired our own boss, but the rest of capitalism is still like destroying the planet,
Right,
right?
which is
Again,
it's just so important, David. It's so important to like keep in mind with this. Like I can't stop thinking about just the degradation that our current system, the barbarism of our current system, and the way that it just brings people down. I mean, it just makes it so that people are so terrified and so scared of, going outside of what are considered to be acceptable boundaries, that they are, basically trapped in an unsustainable, like life sucking, capitalist monstrosity. So I think that I'm really grateful to you. I can say that I'm very grateful to you for wanting to put this forward. It's one of the reasons why I'm really grateful to be a part of this show, and getting to be exposed to the people that we've had on the show. Because I think that, the reality is that we can talk a good game. When it comes down to it, we are surrounded by just an absolutely toxic anti-life that is taken the form of, like, establishment politics in this country, establishment media, and it is out to destroy us all. And it's only through working together, it's only by supporting each other that we have a chance. And it's not trivial, but it's also not trivial to do that. I don't think that it's enough to just like talk about how nice it would be. I think that, you know, it's really important to be able to have a tangible results that people can hook into and be a part of. And without that, I think that the pull to the dark side is so powerful and so strong that it's just going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a commitment, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's only going to happen, I think, through working together with other like-minded people in a way that's like thoughtful and strategic and really addresses people's basic needs, fundamental needs, right? And not just and not just like highfalutin ideals. So I think that's why I'm really grateful and appreciative of your constant focus on both economic and political power. I think it's really, really essential to be focused on those things.
thank you, Jack. And thank you, Jacqueline. I want to lift up who made an astute observation in the chat, and that is a lot of politicians who pose themselves as anti establishment are usually very much part of the establishment, Trump being a case in point. I think that's an absolutely accurate statement. And I often say this is that in terms of like the establishment parties are never going to promote the transformation that Jack and I and you, the Redneck Gone Green community, are advocating for, because the establishment parties exist to promote and defend the establishment. That's why the leadership of the Democratic Party and the leadership of the Republican Party are never going to advocate for these things. And it's why we need to build our own authentic institutions that are meeting our needs for food, for housing, for shelter, for art, for culture, all of those things. And we have to engage in electoral politics. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it's important to recognize that we also have to remember the importance of playing together, the importance of resting together, the importance of forgiving each other. Because I'll tell you, like my mama taught me this saying: we are all better than the mistakes that we make, right? And Jack, like I know, because we've been knowing each other for a minute. I can remember a couple of times that I've had to circle back and say, "Hey, Jack, sorry about that. I wasn't like I feel like I was kind of short with you, or I didn't really, I kind of flashed at you. I got frustrated and so forth." I mean, none of us are always our best self, right? But if we really are sincere about making these kind of changes, then what it becomes is, oh, this is a process. This is life itself. We're going to do our best. And I want to underscore, right, that the that here's how I think about it, y'all. That at the end of the day, I have both a political and spiritual practice, and it goes like this. Y'all, I'm doing my best. I really am. And the divine, I think of it as the goddess. Doesn't matter however you think about it, the higher power, whatever. I don't believe that the goddess has tasked me with winning or succeeding. The requirement that I have is to do my best. And so if I can remember that I'm just going to do my best. But here's the hard part, Jack. Are you ready? Do your absolute best. Release the result. If you can honestly say you've done your dead level best, at the end of the day, then I can sleep well at night and just release the result, because I don't have the ability to stop this rapacious monstrosity of a culture and a monster. But what I can do is to be the best version of David Cobb, to be the best version of that little boy that my mama raised to teach me to be kind and loving. And if I can do that, then I can sleep well at night.
Well, I think that's really sweet. I do, but I also want to say that after many years of therapy, I can definitely say that it is not necessarily the easiest thing to know what your best self looks like, and that figuring out what that means and who that is that's a real that's something to really put an effort into and really try hard at, because it doesn't come easy, I'll tell you.
No, well, this
But
society don't make it easy, does it, Jack? Look at here, y'all. I want to
not at
thank
all.
you for joining this conversation. And remember, Kali Akuno is going to come back onto this program on the first Tuesday of the month. Uh, in the meantime, next Tuesday, we're going to be joined by members of the Poor People's Army, Sherry Honkala and Shamako Noble. These are righteous uh, fighters and defenders of the people.
Sherry's
They'll be
awesome.
talking about the work that they do and the march from the Democratic to Republican Party conventions that they're going to do. I'm really excited to that, and I want to invite you to please join us. And remember this, y'all, that the Redneck Gone Green community is growing. We're getting larger, stronger, and better organized every day. And it's because of folks like you. And so I ask you, I know that everybody says to do it, but I'm going to say, please, would you like, comment, and subscribe? Remember, Redneck Gone Green is a Substack community where Jack and I do writing every week. But we also have a YouTube channel. We have a Facebook channel and a group, and we broadcast on Rumble. But wait, there's more, because we also put out a podcast. So perhaps you're just listening to this on podcast. So however you are connected to this community, please stay connected to this community, because we, the people, are far more powerful than we dare to believe, but we can only win if we unite and fight. Peace.